he hesitated, standing there trembling and with bared fangs glaring at his foe. But he was well trained and had been out with me quite as much as he had been with Bowen. In fact, I had had most to do with his early training. Then he walked slowly and very stiff-legged to his place behind me. Du-seen, red with rage, would have had it out with the two of us had not Al-tan drawn him to one side and whispered in his ear, upon which, with a grunt, the Galu walked straight back to the opposite end of the hall, while Nobs and I continued upon our way toward the hut and Ajor. As we passed out into the village plaza, I saw Chal-az. We were so close to one another that I could have reached out and touched him, and our eyes met; but though I greeted him pleasantly and paused to speak to him, he brushed past me without a sign of recognition. I was puzzled at his behavior, and then I recalled that To-mar, though he had warned me, had appeared not to wish to seem friendly with me. I could not understand their attitude, and was trying to puzzle out some sort of explanation, when the matter was suddenly driven from my mind by the report of a firearm. Instantly I broke into a run, my brain in a whirl of forebodings, for the only firearms in the Kro-lu country were those I had left in the hut with Ajor. That she was in danger I could not but fear, as she was now something of an adept in the handling of both the pistol and rifle, a fact which largely eliminated the chance that the shot had come from an accidentally discharged firearm. When I left the hut, I had felt that she and I were safe among friends. No thought of danger was in my mind; but since my audience with Al-tan, the presence and bearing of Du-seen and the strange attitude of both To-mar and Chal-az had each contributed toward arousing my suspicions, and now I ran along the narrow, winding alleys of the Kro-lu village with my heart fairly in my mouth. I am endowed with an excellent sense of direction, which has been greatly perfected by the years I have spent in the mountains and upon the plains and deserts of my native state, so that it was with little or no difficulty that I found my way back to the hut in which I had left Ajor. As I entered the doorway, I called her name aloud. There was no response. I drew a box of matches from my pocket and struck a light, and as the flame flared up, a half dozen brawny warriors leaped upon me from as many directions. But even in the brief instant that the flare lasted, I saw that Ajor was not within the hut, and that my arms and ammunition had been removed. As the six men leaped upon me, an angry growl burst from behind them. I had forgotten Nobs. Like a demon of hate he sprang among those Kro-lu fighting men, tearing, rending, ripping with his long tusks and his mighty jaws. They had me down in an instant, and it goes without saying that the six of them could have kept me there had it not been for Nobs. But while I was struggling to throw them off, Nobs was springing first upon one and then upon another of them, until they were so put to it to preserve their hides and their lives from him that they could give me only a small part of their attention. One of them was assiduously attempting to strike me on the head with his stone hatchet, but I caught his arm and at the same time turned over upon my belly, after which it took but an instant to get my feet under me and rise suddenly. As I did so, I kept a grip upon the man's arm, carrying it over one shoulder. Then I leaned suddenly forward and hurled my antagonist over my head to a hasty fall at the opposite side of the hut. In the dim light of the interior, I saw that Nobs had already accounted for one of the others, one who lay very quiet upon the floor, while the four remaining upon their feet were striking at him with knives and hatchets. Running to one side of the man I had just put out of the fighting, I seized his hatchet and knife, and in another moment was in the thick of the argument. I was no match for these savage warriors with their own weapons, and would soon have gone down to ignominious defeat and death had it not been for Nobs, who alone was a match for the four of them. I never saw any creature so quick upon its feet as was that great Airedale, nor such frightful ferocity as he manifested in his attacks. It was as much the latter as the former which contributed to the undoing of our enemies, who, accustomed though they were to the ferocity of terrible creatures, seemed awed by the sight of this strange beast from another world battling at the side of his equally strange master. Yet they were no cowards, and only by teamwork did Nobs and I overcome them at last. We would rush for a man simultaneously, and as Nobs leaped for him upon one side, I would strike at his head with the stone hatchet from the other. As the last man went down, I heard the running of many feet approaching us from the direction of the plaza. To be captured now would mean death, yet I could not attempt to leave the village without first ascertaining the whereabouts of Ajor and releasing her if she were held a captive. That I could escape the village I was not at all sure, but of one thing I was positive, that it would do neither Ajor nor myself any service to remain where I was and be captured. So with Nobs, bloody but happy, following at heel, I turned down the first alley and slunk away in the direction of the northern end of the village. Friendless and alone, hunted through the dark labyrinths of this savage community, I seldom have felt more helpless than at that moment. Yet far transcending any fear which I may have felt for my own safety was my concern for that of Ajor. What fate had befallen her? Where was she, and in whose power? That I should live to learn the answers to these queries I doubted, but that I should face death gladly in the attempt, of that I was certain. And why? With all my concern for the welfare of my friends who had accompanied me to Caprona, and of my best friend of all, Bowen J. Tyler, Jr., I never yet had experienced the almost paralyzing fear for the safety of any other creature which now threw me alternately into a fever of despair and into a cold sweat of apprehension as my mind dwelt upon the fate on one bit of half savage femininity of whose very existence even I had not dreamed a few short weeks before. What was this hold she had upon me? Was I bewitched that my mind refused to function sanely, and that judgment and reason were dethroned by some mad sentiment which I steadfastly refused to believe was love? I had never been in love. I was not in love now. The very thought was preposterous. How could I, Thomas Billings, the right hand man of the late Bowen J. Tyler, Sr., one of America's foremost captains of industry and the greatest man in California, be in love with the word stuck in my throat. Yet by my own American standards Ajor could be nothing else. At home, for all her beauty, for all her delicately tinted skin, little Ajor, by her apparel, by the habits and customs and manners of her people, by her life, would have been classed a squaw. Tom Billings in love with a squaw! I shuddered at the thought. And then there came to my mind, in a sudden, brilliant flash upon the screen of recollection, the picture of Ajor as I had last seen her, and I lived again the delicious moment in which we had clung to one another, lips smothering lips, as I left her to go to the council hall of Al-tan. And I could have kicked myself for the snob and the cad that my thoughts had proven me who had always prided myself that I was neither the one nor the other. These things ran through my mind as Nobs and I made our way through the dark village, the voices and footsteps of those who sought us still in our ears. These and many other things, nor could I escape the incontrovertible fact that the little figure round which my recollections and my hopes entwined themselves was that of Ajor, beloved barbarian. My reveries were broken in upon by a hoarse whisper from the black interior of a hut past which we were making our way. My name was called in a low voice, and a man stepped out beside me as I halted with raised knife. It was Chal az. "Quick!" he warned. "In here! It is my hut, and they will not search it." I hesitated, recalled his attitude of a few minutes before, and as though he had read my thoughts, he said quickly, "I could not speak to you in the plaza without danger of arousing suspicions which would prevent me aiding you later, for word had gone out that Al-tan had turned against you and would destroy you. This was after Du-seen the Galu arrived." I followed him into the hut, and with Nobs at our heels, we passed through several chambers into a remote and windowless apartment where a small lamp sputtered in its unequal battle with the inky darkness. A hole in the roof permitted the smoke from burning oil egress, yet the atmosphere was far from lucid. Here Chal az motioned me to a seat upon a furry hide spread upon the earthen floor. "I am your friend," he said. "You saved my life, and I am no ingrate, as is the Batu Al-tan. I will serve you, and there are others here who will serve you against Al-tan and this renegade Galu, Du-seen." "But where is Ajor?" I asked, for I cared little for my own safety while she was in danger. "Ajor is safe too," he answered. we learned the designs of Al tan and Du